Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? We are live. Sorry about the other mess up there a minute ago. I was trying to figure all of this out. So hopefully you guys can hear me and see me backstage. Everybody doing good? I haven't booted you off again. Hi, Nicole. Welcome. Let's see here. First show. Here we go, right? The TV stations are smarter than me because they don't do a live show. Kind of went into a panic about this yesterday, but I'm really good at doing the cha-cha, so that's what we're going to do. Thank you for everything and everyone who is a part of this. Like a party, many people have jumped in to help, and I have a few thank yous to come through to start the show off first. Ruth Massacoris. Oops, sorry. Ruth sponsored the first two shows, so I want to send a big shout out to her and a thank you. Robert Lockridge for designing our backgrounds, the sparks in the backgrounds of the show. My brother Tim will be taking clips of the shows for all of the guests and for promotions. I also want to thank my friend Tina Harris, who is a double platinum recording artist and has offered her music for the podcast upload. So that's super cool. My publishing coach, Kathy Barik, this is modeled after her. So everything in here she has already mastered and I am trying to achieve. Lots of people suggested to have these types of talks, but someone really pushed me to do it. And so I want to thank Tim Hammett, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here, actually. And I also want to thank Amanda Montgomery, because without her, I wouldn't have a name and we wouldn't be here also. And everyone who invited people to join and are going to participate in all of these really cool conversations. I absolutely love this group. So we'll see how things go. And if it craps out and it goes horrible, we can blame all of those people. That's what we're going to do. Some housekeeping. If you register with StreamYard, then I will be able to see your name in the comments. We are streaming here and in YouTube, but until I get some assistance, I can only handle the questions in Facebook. So that's all I can do right now. Please note your question with the hashtag ask so I can search for them, and I may lose them, so you might have to put them back in, but we can find them that way. Also, if you have a question specifically directed to a guest on the panel, make sure you include their name. We may go over an hour. I'm not real sure how some of the guests do, but if we do, this is the beauty of the internet as opposed to TV. If we approach the 90-minute mark, then we're going to have to do it and make this into a series. If you need to leave, you can always fast forward the replay right into the point that you left. There are no stupid people here. Okay, there's a difference between ignorance and stupid, and I have been very ignorant for a lot of my life. But the fact that you are here, the fact that you are willing to have these discussions and learn from these types of things proves that you are not stupid. We may be ignorant, but we are not stupid. And there's no stupid questions. This is a safe space for everyone. It is a private group because I want to control to make sure that the conversations go well and are positive and are constructive. If any trolls appear, or if there's any type of negativity or any just crap, I'm going to boot you. It's just that this is not the place for it. We are here to learn, to grow, to come to knowledge, so we can all be better people and make this a better planet. All does not exist in our world, and literally there is no all, and that needs to be said before this talk, especially on racism, because that's the foundation of it. And I sort of want to, as the only white person on the panel by design, I have some things I want to go over before we get this show started, and welcome everybody who's here and still coming in. But I know this chat is going to go long, so I'm trying to speed through it. As the only white person on this panel, I want to talk about a few things. First of all, reverse racism. There's no such thing. People might be going crazy right now, but there's not. Racism is systematic. That means it's in our districting, our taxes, our schools, medical, the prison system, all of those. There is no reverse racism as far as with white people. Everybody who believes that needs to get that out of their head right now. However, what there is prejudice. And that means that you're prejudging someone. That is different. That is different from a racist system than to be prejudiced. Now, you have to look at the time as far as civil rights have come. My mother-in-law was the granddaughter of a slave. This is something that has not stopped. It's going on. It's the only thing different now is that we are seeing it because of video cameras. It's been happening this whole time. We were just ignorant to it, or apathetic, or ignoring it. But it has been going on, and I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of examples here today. But I want to put this in the perspective of a bully and a victim. If someone is bullied and continually done in a negative manner, and then there is trauma, there is going to be some prejudice there. There is going to be some fear. There is going to be some examples where people are going to say, whoa, I might be afraid. Think about an abuse victim. If you start in, becoming friends, or you're in a partnership and something happens where you trigger that abuse victim, they shrill, they come back, something happens, and you really notice a change in their attitude. A narcissist would say, well, I didn't abuse you. What's your problem? I didn't do anything. Someone with empathy would say, oh my God, someone hurt you. What can I do to help? So that's where we need to stand as white people. We need to acknowledge all of the pain that our ancestors did. You may not have done it. I haven't done it, although I have been ignorant. But there is trauma there. And that trauma is what needs to be discussed and healed. And we, because we control the racism, must be the ones to do so. There is a systematic racial pyramid, and at the top is the white straight male. Right below that is the LGBTQ male, then the black man. Most would expect the white female to be next, but the black man got the vote and the presidency before the white woman. But that's a patriarchy talk that we'll talk about something else. But at the bottom is the black woman, and they're like totally screwed. They're dismissed. And if they're LGBTQIA, it's even worse. So the black male, and I won't even say men because 9-year-olds are being handcuffed and sprayed and are feared. But the black male is viewed as the most threatening thing in our country, where the black woman is ignored or perpetuated in systematic victims. So to say that there is reverse racism is not only a misnomer, it's also based in ignorance, because racism is systematic, and the system is what needs to be changed. Personal experiences come from prejudice, and that can be educated and put out. But again, there's no all in this society. So all white people aren't bad. All black people aren't bad. There's no all, literally no all in our society whatsoever. And I challenge anyone to find one, because I've been looking forever. So, another thing, blue lives are choices. Blue lives can take off their uniform when they leave. So I don't want to hear any of this blue lives matter, because technically they didn't matter on January 6th. And if a black person is a police officer, when they take off that uniform, that life no longer matters. So when you see and you hear blue lives matter, that's just kind of pretty a racist definition and response to the Black Lives Matter, because Black lives they're being killed. But a cop can take off their uniform. It is a choice that they went into that career. Okay. I think that's all of my housekeeping. I'm going to go ahead and welcome our panel. I haven't been able to see if you guys are chatting yet or telling me to go to hell. I'm not real sure. But let's go ahead and welcome. I'm going to take them backwards because of what I was doing before. So our first guest is Augustus. Welcome, Augustus.
Hello,
he is 28 from Worcester, Massachusetts. He's an Army National Guard veteran and currently works with an Air Force contractor. Like a lot of people, the past summer he became more involved with social justice movement after the murder of George Floyd. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Then we have Reverend Arthur Lavon Jones. Let me bring you in. Hello.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. Just glad to be here.
Miss Friar Jones is married to Reverend Jenny Scott Jones, the priest in charge at Grace Episcopal Church. Their son, Arthur T. Jones IV, is the first lieutenant in the Army. Mr. Jones has a degree in English Literature and Language and an MDiv and was ordained in 19 at the St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Georgia. He has spent several years as a pastor at the Missionary Baptist Church. He's passionate about outreach initiatives, building programs for youth and families, a partnership between the parishes and nonprofits. Welcome.
Thank you.
Then we have Miss Nicole Foster. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hello. Nicole, Miss Foster is a TV host of the Hippie Theologians. She is currently a doctor of ministry candidate at Trinity Episcopal School for Ministry in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, while holding a Master of Divinity from Redeemer Seminary in Dallas, Texas, and a BA in History from Southern Methodist University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Then we have Curtis. Welcome, Curtis. Let me bring you on board. Hello. Curtis is a decorated
How are you?
veteran. I am well. How are you doing today? So let me tell everybody about Curtis. He is a decorated Army veteran and single father. He is currently the COO of the East Cleveland Growth Association. He has 2 bachelor's degrees in paralegal and education and public administration and 2 master's degrees, an MBA and a master's in finance. He's also been involved in community relations since 2006 when he left the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. And then we have Cindy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me bring you in, Cindy. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Cindy gets the Distance Award. She is actually in Taiwan. She is our international guest. She's an author, podcaster, and speaker. She hosts Parenting Forward conferences, helping people parent after religious trauma with healthy spirituality. She's the founder of the popular Facebook group, Raising Children Unfundamentalists. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, first, because
yay, Nicole, you showed up.
Yes. I didn't like my camera, so I had to do a new camera. Sorry.
Oh, thanks so much. So, welcome everyone. I am so thrilled at this panel, and I'm so honored to have all of you guys. For the people who were here early, I warned them that I was going to go on a little diatribe. For the people who arrived later, I'm here to learn too. So I want to ask the question to get us started. Do you disagree or want to add to anything I said?
I just want to say I think you were on point with everything you said.
Okay, cool.
Well,
all good for me.
I'll start.
Curtis, you're breaking up.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will start with correcting you just a little bit.
Okay.
I think racism is institutional, systemic, and structural. And until we attack it on those 3 levels, it will continue to be a problem for us.
Agreed. So what have been your personal experiences that you guys can, because you are here to teach me. We have a whole crowd of people. What I have educated myself as far as things that I can do to empower you guys and to make sure that I am being an ally. But again, I'm ignorant, and I admit that. but I know that we should patronize people of colored businesses. I'm sorry if I'm messing with the vernaculars, but minority-owned businesses. This is a way to support you guys, to join in with the marches, to do these types of things. So teach our audience of what we can really do, because again, I really feel that it's, we've created the problem. One of the things that I wanted to say, and I ran out of time and I did not get her name, but there is a quote from this woman that just rocked my world. And she said that it's a good thing that we are looking for equality instead of revenge. And that just totally rocked my world, because we see what's going on in the white community and their temper tantrums. And there is so much respect that needs to be heeded because of that. So what can we do in this systemic, in this structural environment to make things better? Anybody?
Well, think of it like this. Think of it like this. Racism is like running the 100-yard dash. Okay.
Okay.
But white people have a 15-meter head start.
Yes.
That's what it's like. And what we as Black people are looking for is not equality, because equality is defined as everybody deserving the same thing. What we want is equity. We want the same opportunities, same chances, the same, as everybody else. We will shine if given the opportunity. We will thrive if given the opportunity. But we're not given the opportunity, so therefore we're put behind.
True. One of the reasons I wanted Cindy on this call is because of all of the Asian attacks and everything that's going on right now. Because of the COVID virus, because of the things that are going on. This is not something new. Anybody who's in a minority has been affected by this. And, America has a really long history with this. But Cindy, what can you give us to, other than, people just want to blame to someone for COVID, but what can we do to stop the violence, to stop the ignorance, it is an education.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking to you from Taiwan, where we have lost 9 people in total from the pandemic, and we have never gone into lockdown. We have been pandemic free. Wow. So if anybody knows how to keep the pandemic under control, it's Asian people. Okay, like I've never had to go into lockdown. My kids have gone to school this whole time. We are literally living in freedom. Wow. For the year of 2020. Okay, so first of all, I think America needs a huge dose of humility and start listening to other countries and start learning and being willing to understand that America is not the center of the universe and is really not that great at certain things. One of them is controlling this pandemic. It's been very heartbreaking for me to hear anti-Asian racism, especially against elders, because it's such a high value of ours to respect our elders. And these acts of violence towards Asian elders, it's so heartbreaking and undignifying. And it's true that it's not new. This anti-Asian racism, I think a lot of times there's this model minority myth that Asians don't suffer racism, and that isn't true. But I'm not going to speak very much to it because I'm not actually Asian American, and so I want to defer to Asian American voices. But
it is a worldwide broadcast, though, and your experiences, I know they would be different from being in America and having. I haven't witnessed any of it other than watching the horrifying actions on the news. It needs an education, like you said. Just the fact that you guys are in lockdown and I am going on a year next week is insane. It's absolutely insane. And
Yeah.
for you guys to be, for any Asians to be blamed for this is ignorance. It's just based on ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, so my work is to do with parenting. I talk about parenting children for social justice, for liberation, for decolonization. And so I would actually, if you could hang on just a second, I would recommend a book.
Okay. Nicole, that was quick. Okay.
I'd recommend reading this book with your kids. It's called Dr. Lee and the Crown-Wearing Virus. And it's the story of the whistleblower in China who first discovered the COVID-19 and tried to warn people about it. And he ultimately succumbed to the disease and died. But he is a hero and we need to know his story. And this is a beautiful picture book that tells his story. And, telling stories of people who deserve to have their stories told is a wonderful way to be anti-racist. And I really believe as a parenting educator that parenting our kids is one of the best ways that we can combat racism, because racist kids grow up to be racist adults. And so we really need to put behind this idea of colorblind ideology that our kids don't see color, that they're innocent and pure. Kids are not innocent and pure. They're humans, just like we are. And they need to understand, they need to be given the tools and resources to be anti-racist. And so it's just critical for parents to understand that, parenting is not just about raising happy and healthy children. Parenting is about creating a good and just and equitable society. And we have a huge responsibility to be telling our kids stories and to be giving them the vocabulary and the tools and the posture and the practices that are anti-racist.
You said something that I may have misunderstood. I have always thought, and possibly wrong, but that racism is taught. Are you saying that it's not?
Well, it is taught because the society has this poison in the air, and so our kids come into it breathing it. Yeah. So we have to be anti-racist from the get-go. Our kids see color. It doesn't mean that they learn prejudice, but they do see color. And at very, very young ages, they begin to notice the way people of different colors are treated differently.
There's been a lot of studies on that.
That's right. And so we have to address it. We have to not develop silence around race conversations when it comes to kids. We can't say things like, let's just wait till they're older. This is too violent. This is too complicated to talk about. There's nothing that we can't talk about with kids. We can use developmental appropriate language, and we can be aware of our children's sensitivity to certain things, but we can't avoid talking about race, because if we don't, then we're letting them unwillingly breathe in that poison. So that's why it's so important to talk about it and address it at very young ages.
Well, and as parents that we have to teach them, right? I mean, we teach them everything. So to teach them how to work in a society is just fundamental.
Well, I think the bigger problem is silence, especially with white families. It's not what you're teaching them. It's not what you're not teaching them. And so that's what we have to, that's the new form of racism, is the silence. I mean, not new, because it's been around for a long time, but it's just like, racism always morphs into new ways. This generation of racism is this colorblind ideology, and it happens in families, and people use the argument children are too young or too innocent to perpetuate that ideology.
I think it's more like you don't want to talk about it. If you're
well, it's because the parents grew up in silence as well. So they were not given the tools to talk about it. And so it's incumbent upon parents to learn, get your education and then to address it with your kids.
Reverend Nicole, do you have any thoughts? I don't mean to put you on the spot. We've got 5 other guests.
That's okay. What was the initial question? What was the initial question?
Just what you can teach us, so we can be better allies and not ignorant. And let me insert something. I have a grandson that is Jamaican, and I have my son is mixed. And I have another grandson that you would never be able to tell that he had any color in him whatsoever. And they are brothers. And those two walking down the street are going to have completely different experiences. And that terrifies me. That absolutely terrifies me.
Sure.
So I want to change the world, and that's why I want to have these conversations. And until we get to educating, until we get through this, it's not going to change.
I agree. I think one thing that Mr. Scruggs just mentioned was the opportunity. Different, even when oftentimes when African Americans or people of color, BIPOC people get the education, jump through every hoop that society has told them to jump through, we are still not afforded that opportunity. I can say that for myself, even in the church. And for me, I was here going through the ordination process, I wanted to go through the ordination process in the Episcopal Church in Dallas, and I worked full time at a church. And here I was a doctorate student, and they put a white male ahead of me who was 22 and had not finished his MDiv work at all. Here I was a demon and completely MDiv work, and they put him ahead of me and wanted me to train him to be a priest, yet deny me to be a priest. And so I just, I don't think even being so-called Christian is, is a kind of Band-Aid to any of this. Like the scripture says, the heart is deceitfully wicked, if you can know it. So I think realizing the setback in the race and the hurdles that are in the race to even get to where white people are in society and jobs, even in stores. I'm followed around. My white friends are not. And this is 2021. And so how can people help? I think getting educated, and not just depending on their Black or Hispanic or Asian friend to educate them, but to really research and study, and a self-examination. What am I doing to maybe hinder someone or perpetuate a stereotype that is so deep-seated that it's unconscious? I mean, some of this stuff is for some people not as deliberate as some might think. They grew up like that, like Cindy was saying. And so, it takes a heart examination, prayer, studying, and being an ally and being friends with people who are people of color.
One of the things that truly broke my heart was when I learned that I knew that racism was justified by scripture, but I didn't understand the curse of Ham. I didn't understand how all of those things go all the way back to there to say that God ordained the racism. So to say that it's, in the church, of course it would be. It's scriptural. It was, it's a mark, it's a sin, and it's just ignorance. It's ancient people not understanding melanin. And thinking that different skin would mean that it's a curse from God from somehow. But that's a real problem, because if our religious leaders, who are supposed to be our moral compass, are saying it's okay, then that's never going to change. If it's ordained by God, It's gross. That's just sick to me. Mr. Jones, what would you say about that? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. As I was listening to Reverend Foster just now, I was just shaking my head. Being Black in America is awesome and horrifying at the same time. People judge you just because of the color of your skin. It's a paradox. It's an oxymoron. It's a made up thing. And it's been industrialized and perpetuated for years and decades and centuries in order to justify a system where one type of people is superior and one type of people is inferior. You cannot have chattel slavery unless you have subhuman people, because you could not justify treating people that way if they were in fact people. So that's where that whole 3/5 thing came from.
Yeah.
Right. But the comical thing about that is chattel slavery, the slave owners would sleep with the slaves.
Oh, the hypocrisy is thick.
So why would you want to be intimate and or procreate with something that would be considered 3/5 of a human? It's filled with paradoxes. None of it makes sense. And so this is especially true in churches. I'm an Episcopal priest, and we are few and far between. And the next Episcopal priest, you got to drive 5 hours to New York City, south by southeast. If you want to go a different direction, you need to drive 4.5 hours south to Philly. I am it.
Wow.
And where I serve in my churches, there are no Black people in the towns. There are no Black employees. There are no Black businesses. And every day when I drive to work, I constantly pass everything from QAnon flags to Confederate flags to you name it. And I am perpetually made to feel unwelcome. I have to be constantly aware of my surroundings. I am followed by police because I'm the only Black person in town. So there are no people of color in my congregants. And so every day I am by proxy a representation of my race. So I have to make sure that I'm well groomed and well dressed and all of that stuff, because I'm not just representing myself, I'm representing everybody. Black men, Black women, everybody.
Yeah.
And there's an enormous amount of pressure to that. Reverend Foster, I'm sure you can relate to this. I'll give you an example. I'll give the mic back to you, Dr. Paulus. Imagine being in your place of worship, Baptist church, Episcopal church. In this case, I happen to be Episcopal. Church members are already sitting in the pews. I am preparing for worship. My organist, who is old enough to be my grandmother, comes to me and says, Father Jones, I have to tell you something extremely important. This cannot wait. I have to address this right now. I feel compelled to share this with you. Me being a pragmatist, I'm thinking, well, this is my organist. Surely there must be something wrong with the organ. There's something wrong with the piano. Okay, tell me what's wrong. We can figure it out. What is it? Hit me. She said, I feel absolutely compelled to run both my hands through your hair. This is 9 minutes into a service. We have congregants in pews. This is at the altar. And she didn't understand why she didn't have permission to do that.
Wow.
This is what we deal with. This is what we deal with on a constant basis, the microaggressions, the macroaggressions. She didn't care how it would look to anybody else. She wanted to run her fingers through my hair.
Entitlement.
Not even understanding that is the most intimate act that you can do in our culture. If you're not wearing my engagement ring, you don't need to be running your fingers through my hair. My mother bore me 9 months. I've never once touched my mother's hair. And I love my mother very much. So this is what we deal with.
Yeah.
This is what we deal with.
Well, there was one thing that I actually missed in my opening, and I wanted to talk about white pride and black pride. White pride is racist because whites own everything. Okay, so basically you're saying that if you're proud to be white, then it's you're proud to be in charge. As a white person, I am not proud to be a white person. I am proud to be a female because of all of the obstacles I must address to be able to just live in this world. So according to all of the things that I have to go through for being a woman, I can be proud of that. I didn't ask to be born white. So when people of color say that they are proud, it is because of this. It is because that you are proud that you can just survive in this world after being interrogated, accused, followed, arrested, murdered, just because of your skin. You don't have to do anything. And white privilege is that I have never, ever been lost a job or anything like that, or been hindered in any way because of my skin color. So my life has been way messed up. But none of that is because I'm white. A lot of it's because I'm a woman, but not. So I am proud to be a woman as well, because those are things that I have had to endure. So when white people hear, oh, black pride, they think that's racist. And it's like, no, it's because you survived. You have the trauma in your life that you have overcome something. And that is where the pride comes from. In my opinion, am I wrong?
No, that's justifiable. I mean, that's understandable. I mean, we all recognize what the term white privilege means.
But white people don't.
Right, they don't. And we have black excellence.
Yeah.
And that may or may not be recognized. I mean, everybody, you don't have to be Beyonce to be excellent, to be black, right? There are people who are doing their thing and succeeding, and whether they teach or they're in the medical field, legal field, what have you, teachers especially, that do a great job that no one notices. You shouldn't have to be in the NFL to be recognized as, someone who is excellent, who happens to be black. It's all around us, but I'm not sure it's seen.
Because it doesn't want to be seen. They don't want to lose their privilege. I love the saying that goes all over Facebook. It's like, what do you have? Why are you so afraid of minorities taking over? Are they not treated correctly? I mean, for a white man to say that he has had any issues in life, it's not because of your skin, and that is the differentiation. And until people realize that, I don't think they're going to see the problem. I think that it's easy to disregard, it's easy to dismiss, and it's easy to say, oh, I've had a hard life, but it's never been, you can't, because you were born this way. I mean, we're going to have a chat coming up on the LGBTQ, people are born this way. And the irony is that Christians, religious people, tend to dislike or disregard people because of the way they were born. So the way that God made them, not because of what they do, it's because of the way that they were born, the way that they were doing this. So the education is key. And until we get those misnomers and get those things out, the fear, the ignorance, all of that, it's perpetuated. And I think we want to shake some people to go, no, you have to listen. This is what's going to change things.
Can I respond to somebody who asked a question about?
Of course, I have not seen it. I have too many screens going, so I have not been able to ask. Please.
Well, someone was just asking what are some things that white people do in the day-to-day lives. I've lost it as well. But one of the things that I want to say is when people of color share stories like the one that Arthur shared, there's always this like shock and surprise and like, oh, I can't believe this happens. And I don't love that. I feel like it's good to be educated and to understand the experience of another and to be appalled, but like just listen, listen and absorb it instead of feeling like, oh, I'm so sad that you that you have to live like this, or I'm so upset, because then it's like about managing your emotions. And so we're like trying to tell a story and then we have to worry about you being upset about it. So one of the things that I would say for white people is when people tell stories that aren't appalling to you, the best thing you can do really is to understand, is to first listen, and then secondly, to understand why that this story happens, to go and study the history, why the system works the way it does, to produce the kind of experience that people have to live under that kind of oppression. Like that's the best response, I think. Don't be like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset and this is so terrifying, I don't know. I just don't think that's helpful.
Pity gets everybody nowhere.
If I could just piggyback off of what Cindy was saying, I think in addition to understanding, the Black experiences and listening to those stories, one thing that I know I had to deal with, especially this past summer, was I had a lot of the white people in my life reaching out to me and, trying to understand and be an ally and all this other stuff. But one thing I would always leave the conversation with when I realized, like, okay, that spark went off in their eyes, they understand that racism is a thing and it's still alive in 2020, is I'd be like, all right, you understand it. Now it's your job to go out and educate everyone else that you come in contact with. Because I think for a lot of people, what I came to realize is that when I would open a white person's eyes to it, it would be like this light bulb would go off, like, oh my God, racism is awful, it's terrible, it still exists. And sometimes I would get the feeling like they'd walk away like, oh, well, I know, so problem solved, it's good to go. And so I started having to relate to people like, okay, cool, you got it, but now I need you to go and tell your aunt or your uncle that necessarily may not listen to me or will have some idea about me just because of the way I look. They won't want to hear the words coming out of my mouth, but maybe coming from you, you might break through. You have, and that's another thing I want white people to know, is that when you're learning these lessons and you're taking these things from us, we need you to take it back to your people, because there's spaces white people can go that we as minorities can't go. And even if we were to go to those spaces, our words would fall on deaf ears. So the best way for me personally that white people can be an ally is take the lessons that you're learning from us and then bring them back to those white spaces that we can't enter, and make sure that this message is actually getting out. And yeah, you might take some lumps, you might alienate a few people, you might anger a few people, but like that's just a little inclination of, like Father Jones was saying, that's what a little bit of what we go through and we've been going through since we were born. So it's like now you're kind of starting to understand, the uncomfortableness and like, should I speak up? Well, yeah, it sucks, but that thing you say might change someone's mind. Maybe right then, but later on down the ride. So
years ago, I was in a drive-through,
and you're absolutely right, Gus.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Good. You're absolutely right, Gus. There are spaces that that white people can penetrate, and the white people, they understand our stories, And sometimes they empathize with our stories, but when they go back to their enclaves, they don't tell our stories because it's uncomfortable. And they feel the uncomfortableness of sharing our stories. And so they just don't, because it is uncomfortable. And they don't want that uncomfortable, they don't want to live in that uncomfortable space. You know, it's not just okay to be an ally around us, you have to be an ally for us.
Good point. I think it relates back to the thoughts and prayers. You know, that's it. Anyone can say thoughts and prayers. We need action. We need action now. As I was going to say, years ago, I was in a drive-through and I saw a black man coming up behind me, and I was in the car and didn't think much about it. But as he approached my car, he started saying really loudly, I'm okay, I'm just walking through. And even now, to this day, it gives me goosebumps because I was like, oh my God. He felt the need to do that just from walking through a drive-through that I was in waiting for food. So until we acknowledge it, until we see it, I don't want to hear that you're uncomfortable. And you don't want to have these conversations with your family members to try and change the world. People of color are uncomfortable every second they're awake and alive because of the worlds that we have created. So I am over the laziness, I am over the thoughts and prayers, and I want action. I have jumped in between aggressors and BLM protesters because I'm white, and that can diffuse the situation. That is what we need to do. I used my whiteness to confront the other white people and say, no, you have no space here. And until we start acting instead of thoughts and prayers for everything that's so convenient, we can sit there on our lazy asses and do nothing, it's not going to change. So I hope that everybody in this group isn't cursing me out at this point because I haven't seen the thread. But it's true. We need to put our feet down and start helping instead of just saying, oh, that's too bad. That must suck for you, and not doing anything about it. Does anybody else have anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think along with that, one big thing for me goes with the thoughts and prayers is you have a lot of companies, Nike, Band-Aid, Pepsi this summer that, came out with these great ads and, we're going to donate this sort of money and all this other stuff. And all that stuff is well and good. But when you look at, the people who are on the boards of these companies, the people actually making decisions and all this other stuff, it looks like a snowstorm in Antarctica. So it's like that goes along with it. It's like, I don't need, while it's cool that you'll donate, $10 million to Black Lives Matter, and, you're going to come out with a signature Black Lives Matter shoe and the proceeds are going to go to the criminal justice reform system. Wonderful. That's this year. What happens 5 years down the road when Black Lives Matter isn't the hot trending topic? Your boardroom's still going to be full of white people, and I guarantee you're going to continue to make mistakes down the line. That's the thing that is kind of laughable to me, is repeatedly, and not just this past year. I'm only 28, and I've seen it multiple times in my life, but you see companies that come out with a racist ad or a racist slogan or something, and it's the same old story. Oh, we apologize. We didn't mean to offend anyone. We're going to make a sizable donation, blah, 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 blah. Everyone forgets about it until the next one comes. Well, if you want to save yourself some money and save yourself some face, put some Black people or people of color in those boardrooms, because I guarantee you, if you had one Black person or one person of color in that room, that would be all to be like, that's not going to fly. That's not going to happen. And that's why real representation is so important, outside of just, okay, we're going to slap this multicolored face on our poster and call it good. That's not how things work. If you want real change, we actually have to get into these places. And it goes back to what Father Jones was saying. To me personally, my idea of Black excellence has changed from people like, sports stars and actors and stuff like that, which while they're all good and great, to me right now, I would think of Black excellence as a Black psychologist, just because I know for me as a man, I've been to therapy. I had a white therapist. She was great, but it's just something about trying to bare your soul to someone who can never fully understand your experience. It's like therapy I just personally believe, until I can find a Black therapist, someone who can truly relate, therapy may not really work for me the way it works for other people. But then when I go and try and find a Black therapist, it's a needle in a haystack to find, first of all. And then when you try and figure out why, there's not many available. And why is that? You look and you see not many Black males are going to college. Well, why is that? Because not many are graduating high school. And it's just you trace it back down, and it goes back to the systemic institutional racism that we talked about at the beginning. And so it's like, this stuff is so ingrained, and it's messing up our lives in so many different facets that people aren't beginning to understand. But conversations like this hopefully can start drawing attention to it, so we can bring about that change.
I was in preparing for this,
You're absolutely
going down the rabbit holes of the systemic racism, and even property tax is in itself kind of racist, because our schools are funded by property tax, and Black neighborhoods or minority neighborhoods aren't as wealthy. They're redlined. They're put into this other thing. So the property tax is low. So the schools don't get enough money to educate their people, and it perpetuates. That's what I mean by systemic. It's everywhere. And when a person of color is able to succeed in this, they have to do 10 times better. They have to be over and above. I mean, look at Obama. The way that they shredded him was saying he wasn't even American, because he had made it through. It just wasn't possible. But I have to say, this is not an excuse in any way. It's more of a very bad judgment. But white people are lazy, and that's proof, because they got all the slaves. White people didn't build this country, and so they don't want to change anything either, because they have the power. So we are really going to need to work through this, the cognitive dissonance that occurs, the fear of, oh my God, am I going to be treated as bad as I've treated people? All of that is ingrained in who we are. Oprah did a thing back in the 80s that just blew my mind about the systemic and how it's just ingrained in us. Football teams are owners. CEOs are not. Sports teams, all owners. Bill Gates isn't an owner. He's a CEO. So, it's the little things that we don't even pick up, the subconscious things that go into each day that we need to be aware of in order to start changing things. Go, wait a minute, that's crap. That's crap. That shouldn't be that way.
Well, even historically, it's like the story of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. That's portrayed as a love story. Well, Sally Hemings was a slave. She was 14 years old when Thomas Jefferson bought her. She bore him 6 children, 5 of which lived. I mean, theirs wasn't a love story. He owned her. But in all of the history books, it is portrayed as that they had this mad passionate love affair that was going on. No. Love implies that there's some kind of choice. Sally Hemings didn't have a choice. She couldn't tell him no at 14 years old when he was in his 30s. He took her to Paris when he was ambassador to France to live. I mean, this is the type of example of how insidious racism really is. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't a love story. She was a slave. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we have to go back to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to go back to that level to dig really deep. I mean, when the 19 Africans got off the White Lion in Virginia in 1619, you know, that's where it started. And that's where we have to start. We went from chattel slavery to Reconstruction to the Black Codes to Jim Crow to the Civil Rights Movement to COINTELPRO to Ronald Reagan. And now we're here. And now we're at Donald Trump. That's how deep it goes. And until we understand how deep it really goes, then there'll never be any change.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted some Asian voice on this too, because it's not just people of color. I mean, Asians are people of color, but I mean, look at the internment camps in the 40s. Anybody, any type of minority that white people can control to their benefit, they're going to do so. And the violence against Asians right now, I mean, the violence against everybody, you know, this has started because of George Floyd and all of those things and the tears. And we just have to get active. We really need to get, thank you guys for educating us, but we need to get active. We need to stop these thoughts and prayers and actually, like I said, put our feet to the ground and start doing something. And appreciating that you guys aren't out for revenge, because I probably would be, quite frankly.
But I think that's part of the problem right there, is that like Curtis said, we're not looking for equality, we're looking for equity. But like you said, Dr. Sherry, white people would think that we're coming for revenge. And I can't blame them, because like you said with the bully example, if you beat on someone day after day after day after day, you're going to expect that they're going to want their comeuppance. So, like, I understand why some white people believe that, you know, and not just minorities, women or whatever, people asking who have been underfoot for a long time, asking for a seat at the table, why a lot of people who have been in power for so long, specifically white men, can see it as an attack on them, because this country has been running this way for the past 300 or so some odd years, and to uproot a system where white men have been sitting on top, you're gonna best believe that some people are terrified to change that. So yeah, it feels like an attack on them. So I think it just makes it that much harder for the jobs of minorities and women to be like, okay, hey, we have to fight for this equality, but at the same time explain to you that we're not trying to fight you. We're not trying to beat you down. We're not trying to put you into the position that you put us in. We're just asking for a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And so both very hard battles to fight.
Male insecurity and fragility needs to be tackled at some point, because if they weren't so insecure, then we could say, come to the table, you know, come and have a seat. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Does anybody have to leave? Or can we answer some of the questions? Is everybody good? Okay. Wow. Lots and lots of questions. In fact, I've missed some of them. So if I missed your question, go ahead and put it back in and I will get to it. I think Christine asked, I think is what Cindy answered, in the day-to-day, what are the things that white people can do or say unintentionally? Oh, no, this wasn't answered. This is a good question, Christine. In the day-to-day, what are the things that white people do or say unintentionally that make people of color upset or uncomfortable? Anyone want to tackle that?
There's so many. I don't know where to begin. It's like you're not like the others. You know, you're different, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand how someone who is racist can be a fan of a sports team. Because if we're not talking about hockey, the majority of your team is black. So how does that work exactly? Right? They're okay because they play for the Celtics. How does it work?
Yeah.
It's a paradox.
It's only okay as long as you guys stay quiet. Don't kneel. Don't get upset. Don't protest in any way, and then we'll be okay with you.
I think.
So, I mean, there's even more racism built into those levels too.
Yeah, I think America. You know,
well, because
the motto was "Make America Great Again," right?
Because sports gives people.
Go ahead, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, the sport as you were talking, Father Jones. Sports is a way for people not to see us as humans. They don't see us as human beings. They see us as performers. It's the same way with movies. They don't see us as human beings. They see us as actors playing roles.
Okay.
That's why, OJ, the OJ Simpson saga is paramount to our struggle.
Mm.
As long as OJ was in that pigskin and running up and down the field, he was a great guy. He was a great guy. But then what happened? He moved into their circles. He married a white woman. He left his black wife and children in San Francisco. He moved down to LA and married a white woman. And then it began to turn for OJ. And when the murders happened, and I'm not going to get into whether he did it or he didn't do it because that's irrelevant to this conversation. But when the murders happened, OJ realized he was black. Vanessa Williams was Miss America. And then the new pictures came out and she realized she was black. Michael Jackson, when his hair caught on fire, he realized he was black. Tiger Woods was Cablinasian. It was a big joke to him. Then his wife threw a golf club at his car and he crashed his Cadillac into a tree. And he realized he wasn't Cablinasian, he was black. It all, they don't see our humanity and they never have. When Thomas Jefferson wrote "All men are created equal," he wasn't talking about us. When James Madison wrote "We the people," he wasn't talking about us. They were never talking about us. And now, in today and age, make America great again, as you talked about. Make America great again, okay? Understand that make America great again was all about taking us back. Taking us back. And that's where it is. You have to understand. In 1865, the 13th Amendment gave us the right to vote. Okay. In 1913, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. But we really didn't get the right to vote until 1965 with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And now they still don't want us to vote. There have, since the 2020 presidential election, November 3rd, 2020, there have been in 50 states, there have been 453 pieces of legislation introduced in this country to restrict access to the ballot. 453 pieces of separate legislation to restrict access to the ballot, ending mail voting, curtailing in-person votes. These are the things that we deal with on a daily basis and the things that nobody really wants to talk about.
Yeah, what can white people do to fight this is figure out how to stop those bills from being passed.
Yeah. Nicole, I'm sorry to call you out, but we've had a special request for you to speak. There's actually, we want to hear from Nicole, so I was on the spot.
Okay. I will add, if I may, there is a particularity to being a Black female that I think often gets overlooked. And some people think, well, how's that different than being a Black male? It's there's an interesting struggle. Number one, there's always this feeling of being unprotected. There's always a feeling of being sexually, fetished by some of our white male brothers. There's also a feeling of not just feeling unprotected, but having to protect. My brother is 7 years younger than me, and he has his family and he works nights, and we are always worried because he works nights. We're worried because he's a Black male in a decent car in Dallas, Texas, leaving his shift, in the middle of the night. And what happens if he gets pulled over? That is a real fear. And so, or there's this a concept of Black women always having to kind of get over something or be strong when we really want to just cry our eyes out. And not always,
Or the angry moniker.
Yeah, or the angry Black woman, or she's tough, she can take it, but be softer on the white woman. No, I'm a female, so what I'm sensitive to, is probably what other women are sensitive to, in the general scheme of things. So I think being a Black woman, there's like 5 translations I feel like I have to go through to even kind of communicate with someone who's white. And there's always the second or third guess about what am I going to say? How are they going to portray it? How should am I moving too aggressive while I'm talking? Or, it's always at the comfort of white people. And that's extremely, extremely tiring. When you just feel like you can't be yourselves. And I do want to share, with everyone that some may think, oh, well, it doesn't matter if you're white or Black. Okay, but there needs to be understanding that because of slavery, Black people do have our own culture. We do. We have our own culture. We have certain things we say. If I speak to another Black person, they say something, I know exactly what they mean. And the other people who are white around us don't know what we mean. But so there is a culture that has developed, and I think it's maybe some people think it's backfired because now, there's these people that see the world different. Well, that was set up to be so. And so now we have our own culture. And so I think I don't know what, why I'm saying this. I just want people to have that understanding and that information, maybe to help them better navigate any situation that they may be in concerning people of other races.
Well, I think you're trying to say, don't feel like you're entitled to every space and every conversation that you're in, right? Like you get to have your own, if you're speaking even in a public forum, like on Twitter or whatever, and you're saying something that only people in Black culture will get, you get to have that. And they don't need to be like, what do you mean? And, or try to insert themselves somehow, or ask you to educate. Like that's to give you the space that you deserve.
Yes, you put it so much better than I did. Thank you.
And as a white person, I have been escorted out of Black bars. I have, I lived in Atlanta for 3 years, and I really noticed that while we were all a group of friends, the people of color were over here and the white people were over here. But again, if that were to upset me, it would mean that I felt entitled. You know, if I wasn't welcome in a Black club, I need to get out. And I don't blame them. That is their spot. And we have our spots, you have your spots, and it's time for us to respect yours. That's where I think a lot of the problem is because we do feel entitled. You know, well, you're here in our society. No, this is all of our society. And until we respect your boundaries that you guys have never been able to enforce, this is going to perpetuate, I think, you know, because it's entitlement is rampant, you know, with everybody, but especially with the white community versus the communities of color. And then they get all upset because we're not invited. Slow your roll, know your role. You know, it's just, again, it's education. Steve Grossman had a question. How do you feel the racism experienced by Blacks who are one of just, I'm sorry, my dog is getting really upset. So if you hear him growling, that's what it is. Let me start over. How do you feel the racism experienced by Blacks who are one of just a few of their communities differs from the experience by Blacks who are in a place with large populations, but where the atmosphere is polarized? Is the latter more a fear of losing power and fear versus ignorance? Curious if you see being anti-racist different in those two environments. Steve's a writer, so. Any comments on that?
I'll take a shot at it. First, you have to look at your environment of where you are, because it's different everywhere you are. I was born and raised in the Deep South, and down there, racism is overt and in your face.
Yeah.
Up here in New York, upstate New York, it's very covert. It's very subtle. It's implied. You might think you have a friend who really can't stand you. And you won't know until you know. And as crazy as it sounds, I prefer the in your face, because everybody knows what it is.
At least it's honest.
You don't like me. I'm not welcome here. Now I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, the false equivalency or the false welcoming. I think one of the primary things that would be of great help in terms of adopting an anti-racial approach system-wide is the learning of history.
Yeah, huge.
Warts and all.
Yeah.
See, give me an example. I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, and if you know anything about the Falcons, they stink. Okay,
I'm sorry.
They're not a good team. Okay, they have a losing culture, losing history. But I criticize the team because I want the team to be better. I want the team to be competitive, to rise above their station. Well, the same is also true of this country. We criticize this country and we criticize these institutions because we expect better, we want better. And when you think about it, African Americans are probably the most patriotic people on the face of the earth, because if we wanted revenge, every city and every block and every town would be on fire all the time, perpetually. There will be nothing but pillars of smoke everywhere you look. We don't want that. We just want to be loved and welcomed and to be a part of this. We love this country. And the first thing that Black people are criticized about in America is patriotism. We're very patriotic. We're extremely patriotic. That is overlooked. But we know we have a better idea of the twin genocides of America. African American genocide and the Native American genocide. And until America atones for those twin genocides, America will never truly be great. That's a fact. That has to be accounted for. That has to be acknowledged. And really, it needs to be atoned for somehow. I don't know what form that takes, but that's what's needed. And the primary building block of that is learning the history.
Well, until you recognize and accept the problem, you can't change it.
Correct.
And so, until we accept that there is a problem and people aren't just being complaining or being crybabies. I mean, I've heard all of this stuff. It's just ridiculous. That's just a way to not accept it and to get out of change. Again, thoughts and prayers, lazy.
Well, and this is where we were talking about putting Black people on boards. They need to be on the school boards determining what kind of curriculum is going into teaching the kids the history that is not whitewashed. And that has to happen at a systemic level to make a difference.
One of the things I just want to throw in here real quick that I've been Jesus isn't white. Jesus isn't white. So get over it. We even whitewash Jesus.
Watch out.
I had to say that too. I'm sorry.
To piggyback on Father Jones's point, what white people have to do is stop wrapping their racism in patriotism.
Oh yes, good point.
That's what the whole flag protest was all about. White people tend to wrap their racism in patriotism. The whole Confederate battle flag thing. What is that all about? They lost that war. What other country in the world has statue monuments honoring traitorous insurrectionists? Where does that happen?
Well,
I've visited Germany. You don't see statues of Hitler and the Nazis. You don't in Italy, there are no statues of Mussolini. But here in America, we celebrate traitorous insurrectionists who wanted to secede from this nation over slavery.
Yeah, and that's where the education comes in, because even my family, who are a bunch of racists, by the way, let me just clarify that. But they say that this is heritage and this is history, and it's like, if you knew the heritage and the history, you would know it was racist. So don't give me that. And I think it's more of a human nature. I don't want to be the white person bashing all the white people, but we do things that are convenient, right? We do things that are easy. And whenever we can blame our bad behavior on something else, we do it. We've done it with religion. We've done it with politics. We do it with schools. We do it with flags. Anything to justify our bad behavior is what we wrap ourselves into. I mean, to say that, the people who invaded the Capitol on 1/6 were patriots shows how messed up we are. I mean, it makes my head explode. There was another good question. Another one from Christine. Is there a way to call out racism or stand up for a person of color without it being interpreted as a white person coming to their rescue and therefore inadvertently offending the person they're trying to help? I'd like to insert the white savior thing that's coming on. Are there any do's or don'ts to this?
This is one that I personally like to talk to people about.
Okay.
I feel like the easiest way to answer that one is handle the problem, address the issue, and then let it die. So, for example, if if as a white person you're out with your black friend or friend who's a person of color, and someone says or does something that you perceive as racist, there's no need to go, raise it up to 15 and educate them on the entire history of racism and, tell them they're Hitler and all this other stuff. Like, that does more harm than good, because now you're just flying off the handle at this person who it could have very well been something racist, but they might not have meant it that way. And even if they did, racism is one of the hardest things to prove, because all someone has to say is, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way, or I was just kidding. And so, like, when you ramp it up to an 11 right off the bat, you've already lost the war. So it's very simple. Come and be like, hey, because honestly, the best way to do it is just ask a simple question. Like, if you're I'll give you an example. If you're at a restaurant with a black friend of yours, and you order your drink, and the waiter is like, oh, and for you, grape soda, just simply look at them and be like, why would you suggest that? Just something simple, easy, and then wait for their response. Because if it's not racist, it could, then they'll explain it. And if it is, they'll be put on the spot and they'll look like an idiot. And you can just sit back and be like, no, just simply, why'd you didn't offer me, you didn't guess what I wanted to drink, but you guessed it. So just want to know, explain your logic. Because most of the time there is no logic behind it. So if you present it to them like that, like, explain, I want to know where you're coming from, and they can't explain themselves, that will have a longer lasting impact than if you go flying off the handle at them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they'll never want to look stupid again.
Well, then they have to own it.
Exactly. And no one wants to do that. It's one of the toughest things for them to do. So you win, they have to work it out for themselves. So that's personally how I like to say to handle it.
Curtis, did you have something to say? Okay.
Oh,
well,
no,
we
no.
went well over. Does anyone else have anything to say before we? I loved this, by the way. I thought this was fabulous. I think that we have a lot more conversations to have and a lot more growth to have, but I so appreciate all of your participation and all of your wisdom and all of your experience, more than you'll ever know. Do you have anything else to say before we knock this off?
Thank you for having us. Thank you for caring and giving us a space to voice these things.
Thank you.
I second that. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
It. Wonderful.
Amen.
Thank you to everyone who listened to it also. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. And you guys can come back. We'll do another one of these down the road. We've got a bunch of shows booked, so I appreciate it more than you know. Let me check the thread one more time. Seeing, yes, please. This should be a start. Thank you all. Everybody's saying thank you. And then you guys can go ahead and read the thread. I will post this. This will remain in the group. It's going on YouTube, which is also streaming, and then I can send you guys links for the recording. Thank you so much, and enjoy your evening. Thanks, guys.